When Prince Philip passed, he took with him decades of royal secrets, or so the world believed. But what if one man was entrusted with keeping the crown's most volatile truths? A former aide, long forgotten by the public, has re-emerged posthumously as the unexpected key to a royal reckoning, his final act. A classified package sent directly to Prince William, and what it contains threatens to shatter the palace's fragile peace. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. He was known only to a few and trusted by even fewer. Commander Hawthorne, a name rarely whispered beyond the palace gates, had spent over 4 decades in the quiet shadows of royal service. No scandal touched him, no press ever named him. But within the walls of Buckingham and Balmoral, he was the man to whom Prince Philip entrusted matters too delicate for even family to know. Hawthorne wasn't just a staff member, he was a vault. And inside that vault, it turns out, were secrets that not even King Charles had access to. According to palace insiders, Philip, ever the strategist, had developed a habit in his later years, dictating encrypted audio logs, handwritten notes, and discreet observations about the royal household. These weren't memoirs meant for public consumption. They were warnings, reflections, and at times damning accounts of what he feared might eventually destroy the crown from within. Hawthorne's will, opened quietly and far from the public eye, contained one clause that set off a ripple inside the highest echelons of the monarchy. He had requested a sealed file, no legal title, just labelled, "For the heir," be delivered directly to Prince William upon his death. No intermediaries, no royal handlers. The aide bypassed both King Charles and any official archival process, instead choosing to place this trove of classified material into the hands of a man still learning to navigate the brutal balance of power and loyalty. When the envelope arrived, William reportedly dismissed the delivery as just another tribute to his grandfather's legacy. But as he opened it, those around him noticed a swift shift in his demeanour. Palace aides later described the moment as chilling. William sat motionless, scanning page after page, his jaw clenched, his fingers trembling ever so slightly. One aide later remarked, "He didn't speak. Not a single word. For hours." What exactly could have been in those files to cause such a reaction from a man known for his stoic restraint? The answer, it seems, lies in the pages that bore one name over and over again, Camilla. Embedded in the documents were timelines, private correspondences, and anecdotal records surrounding Camilla's long and controversial involvement with the royal family. These weren't the sanitized narratives fed to the public. These were the unfiltered accounts from a man who had seen every whisper, every tear, every deception unfold behind closed doors. And in that moment, William realized that what lay before him wasn't just a historical curiosity, it was a call to action. Because if even half of what was in those files proved true, the foundations of trust between the past and future of the monarchy were already crumbling. But what exactly did William uncover in those sealed files, and why was Camilla's name all over them? Camilla's rise to royal prominence has often been framed as a tale of love conquering all, but behind that polished public image lies a web of maneuverings few dared question. Until now, the files expose what could be a carefully plotted journey, peppered with quiet eliminations, backroom deals, and personal betrayals. For decades, the public had been served a story that sparkled with resilience, romance, and redemption. Camilla, once cast as the villain in a tragic royal love triangle, had somehow emerged a queen. But what the newly revealed documents suggested was something far more unsettling, a cold, calculated path carved through the heart of the monarchy. William, still reeling from the initial shock of the dossier, found a chilling chronology charting Camilla's ascent. It began long before the public ever knew her name. Philip's aide had assembled a dark counter-narrative. Camilla had been methodical, choosing her allies within the press, building subtle influence with royal staffers, and shaping a public image with masterful precision. One particular document detailed a strategy session between Camilla and a now-retired media executive, one that took place weeks before her first public appearance with Charles. The plan, as outlined, was to shift her narrative from a royal disruptor to a misunderstood romantic. Carefully orchestrated interviews, press leaks, and glowing features followed, painting her as the rightful partner fate had long delayed. In parallel, troubling patterns began to emerge across internal palace records. Certain advisors who had been vocally opposed to Camilla's growing role suddenly found themselves reassigned, retired early, or silenced entirely. A senior aide close to Queen Elizabeth had once allegedly warned that Camilla's influence would become too deep to uproot. That aide's sudden exit came weeks later, unexplained and unrecorded in official staffing reports. Even more disturbing was a folder labeled Operation Reframe. Within it were memos suggesting direct lines of communication between Camilla's camp and a network of high-ranking media editors. These contacts were not random, they were targeted. Royal coverage was manipulated. Harsh headlines about Diana's final years were recirculated, while Camilla's public image was polished with increasingly favourable pieces. The British press, so often critical, had apparently been played like a piano. William, once convinced this was all the natural tide of royal rehabilitation, now faced a much darker truth. The optics of love were manufactured, and his family's wounds had been weaponized. But it wasn't just about public image. A timeline cross-referenced with personnel files revealed that in the months leading to Charles and Camilla's marriage, a sweeping reshuffle had occurred. Long-serving staff were replaced, positions altered, and key opposition voices vanished from the inner circle. The word neutralized appeared more than once in the aide's notes. And then, among the last pages of that chapter, William found a scribbled sentence, unmistakably in his grandfather's handwriting. She rewrote her legacy in real time, and we let her. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't even angry. It was resigned. A man who had watched history being rewritten while remaining powerless to stop it. As William flipped through page after page, one entry froze him mid-breath, a moment that revealed Camilla's past actions weren't just strategic, they may have been personal. They called her the People's Princess, but for Diana, the palace became a prison. New evidence suggests Camilla's influence behind the scenes wasn't passive, it was targeted. Now, William confronts the possibility that the woman who contributed to his mother's pain never truly left the battlefield. As William dove deeper into the trove of files left behind by Commander Hawthorne, he was unprepared for the emotional ambush that lay waiting. Tucked between pages of political scheming and classified logs was a bundle sealed in red wax, its contents personal, private, and piercing. Inside were handwritten letters from his mother, addressed not to anyone in particular, but rather written as though she were trying to exhale her truth in a world that had silenced her. Some were barely legible, smeared with teardrops. Others had annotations in Prince Philip's unmistakable handwriting brief. Sharp remarks such as, "She's not imagining this, and this should never have reached her." William's hands trembled as he read his mother's haunting words. "I feel watched, controlled, hunted." It was not merely the voice of a distressed woman, it was the cry of someone systematically cornered. The dossier drew a brutal connection between Diana's unraveling emotional state and Camilla's growing shadow. One document claimed that Camilla, by then already reinserted into Charles's private circle, had access to sensitive updates about Diana's mental health briefings that were never formally recorded. If true, it meant that Camilla had more insight into Diana's vulnerabilities than even most senior royals. And those vulnerabilities were not met with compassion. According to an internal memo, Camilla allegedly used this information to fortify her influence, advising Charles to position staff more loyal to her and gradually remove those sympathetic to Diana. Over time, Diana found herself surrounded by unfamiliar faces, cold shoulders, and calculated whispers. Isolation wasn't accidental, it was engineered. Among the most chilling revelations was an intercepted communication, dated mere weeks before Diana's final tour. It suggested a strategic leak of information regarding Diana's emotional instability, a move insiders believe was designed to discredit her before her eventual divorce settlement. The timing aligned with a wave of tabloid headlines that turned public opinion sharply against the princess, portraying her as unstable, erratic, and even dangerous. It had always been assumed that these leaks came from overzealous reporters or careless aides. But what if they came from someone with an agenda, someone intent on ensuring Diana would never reclaim the public spotlight she once dominated? As William pieced together the pattern, his sorrow began to transform into something far more volatile, righteous fury. This wasn't just a smear campaign. It wasn't just rivalry. It was a silent war waged behind polished palace walls. His mother, stripped of support, dignity, and peace, had not simply lost her marriage, she had lost her sanctuary. These weren't conspiracy theories buried in tabloid ink. They were handwritten cries for help, documented betrayals, and strategic maneuvers backed by someone who had long been cast as a bystander. For William, the emotional cost was incalculable. Every memory of his mother's sadness now pulsed with a new, painful clarity. But William's discovery wouldn't just rattle his personal world, it would question the moral fabric of the monarchy itself. Long before Camilla was crowned, Prince Philip tried to block her path quietly, subtly, yet with growing urgency. Buried within the files is a document never meant to see daylight, a proposal for a Royal Integrity Council. And its first case? Camilla. As William turned another page in the confidential archive, a stark folder labelled Crown Safeguard Protocol emerged, dated nearly 15 years prior. Inside, it lay the remnants of Prince Philip's last formal attempt to protect the monarchy from internal erosion. It wasn't a public decree. It wasn't approved by Parliament or even circulated among senior royals. It was a draft, raw but meticulous, proposing the establishment of a secret oversight body that would investigate misconduct within the royal family before it reached scandalous proportions. Named the Royal Integrity Council, the document bore the weight of one man's foresight, a man who had seen the Crown's foundations wobble far too often. And disturbingly, the Council's first potential subject had been circled in red ink: Camilla. According to annotations, Philip had grown increasingly uneasy with her rising power and perceived influence over Charles's decisions. He had watched as tradition was bent, advisors were silenced, and protocol gave way to preference. In one transcribed conversation preserved by Hawthorne, Philip allegedly warned Queen Elizabeth, "She's charming, yes, but charm unchecked can become rot." Yet the Queen, bound by both maternal instinct and constitutional caution, refused to greenlight any action that would fracture the family further. Philip didn't press, but he didn't stop either. Instead, he began compiling dossiers. Hawthorne noted in his journal, "The Duke believes in duty more than peace. He knows this ends badly if left alone." One letter stood out, a personal memo Philip never sent but kept hidden among the drafts. In it, he called Camilla a long-term destabilizing force, and wrote that her ascent was not a matter of public acceptance, but of palace compliance. His concern wasn't just about personality or reputation, it was about influence. Influence over Charles, influence over media, and influence, perhaps most dangerously, over the royal future. The file detailed instances where Philip believed Camilla had overstepped advising on staff placements, vetting invitations, even steering informal policy debates. None of it provable. All of it corrosive. And then, just as William believed he was getting a clear picture, another twist emerged. The original draft of the Royal Integrity Council had vanished from the official palace archives. Hawthorne's copy, hidden, protected, never entered into the royal record, was the only surviving version. According to his private notes, there had been an attempt to bury the idea completely. Internal messages flagged the plan as inappropriate, divisive, and potentially destabilizing. One note, unsigned, read, "We cannot afford to turn scrutiny inward. We must preserve appearance above all." But William's heart was already on fire. In the margins of one page, he scribbled 6 words in sharp black ink. He tried. He failed. "I won't." It was no longer about rumors or shadows. It was about legacy. His grandfather had seen the warning signs and been silenced. William, however, was not beholden to the past in the same way. He had seen the cost of silence in his mother's pain, in his family's disintegration, and in the lies carefully preserved as history. But while William wrestled with history's weight, Camilla was preparing for her next move, unaware that the storm was already building. Among the files was a name William had never seen before, linked to a remote royal estate, locked down for years. What he found there wasn't just a place, it was a person, someone who hadn't been heard from in decades, until now. Deep in the middle of the classified dossier, buried between financial spreadsheets and redacted correspondences, was a handwritten note from Commander Hawthorne. 3 words, underlined twice. Lockridge. Confidential, protected. No official royal estate bore that name publicly. No map listed its coordinates. And yet, cross-referenced with Philip's private security trust, it existed off the record, off the grid, and concealed by layers of bureaucratic redirection. The only hint of its purpose came from a single entry in Philip's journal. Lockridge is no longer just safe house, it's sanctuary. William's instincts surged. He'd been chasing pieces of a puzzle in ink and whispers, but Lockridge might hold flesh, blood, and memory. Without informing even his closest aides, William orchestrated a covert visit. No royal cars, no official documentation, just silence and urgency. The drive was long, the arrival unannounced. But inside the estate, the past was waiting. She was older now, her name long forgotten in palace staff rosters. But once, she had served as a personal assistant to Diana, present in the darkest corners of the Wales marriage, quiet in the face of war between 2 women bound to the same man. Her presence at Lockridge wasn't voluntary, it was protection, or exile, or both. And what she told William shattered whatever hope remained that Camilla's legacy was just misguided, not malicious. She hadn't spoken in years, not to the press, not to the firm. Her silence had been bought, then enforced. But now, face to face with Diana's son, she broke. Her voice cracked, but her memory was razor sharp. One night, she said, she walked into a heated argument between Charles and Camilla. The door was slightly ajar. The topic was Diana. Camilla's voice was cold. The phrase she remembered most? It has to be done. She's never going to leave unless we force it. The assistant said nothing at the time. But within days, she was gone, transferred, retired, and hidden. Philip had been the one to reach out, to shield her in Lockridge. In his journal, another grim note confirmed it. I moved her to protect her. She knows too much. The woman's final words to William weren't theatrical. They were simple, devastating. I wasn't supposed to speak. But she didn't win. Not really. And in that moment, something in William shifted again. The truth wasn't just historical. It was still alive, buried in exile, buried in fear. Lockridge wasn't just a house, it was a monument to what the monarchy had chosen to ignore. And the woman inside wasn't just a witness, she was a casualty. As the pieces fell into place, William was forced to ask the question no heir should ever face. What if the future queen was built on a past of sabotage? In the heart of Windsor, history cracked. William, typically the embodiment of royal discipline, summoned Camilla for a private audience. What unfolded wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning decades in the making. The walls of Windsor had heard whispers before. William, armed with the contents of Hawthorne's classified archive and still burning with the revelations from Lockridge, requested a meeting that bypassed protocol and formality. No aides, no advisors, just heir and queen consort, 2 figures bound by blood and burden, but now standing on opposite sides of a dangerous line. Those who saw him before the meeting said he was pale, tight-jawed, and silent. But once the door closed, the silence shattered. The future king did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words cut deeper because they were delivered with icy restraint. You think the crown will forget, he said. I won't. Camilla's reaction, according to multiple insiders, was instant and visceral. Her defenses rose like armor. She accused William of dredging up ghosts, of letting the past cloud his duty. You've been poisoned by ghosts, she snapped, her tone sharp, almost desperate. But it was the look on her face, they say, that betrayed her. When William calmly placed a red folder on the table and said, "I've read everything," the blood drained from hers. She asked what he planned to do. He didn't answer right away. He only reminded her that what was once locked away was no longer buried. Her actions, her alliances, her strategy, they were no longer invisible. When Camilla pressed him, tried to claw back the image she had so carefully cultivated over years of public reinvention, William leaned forward and delivered a sentence that would echo throughout the palace halls. "You may have rewritten your story, but I'm the one who decides how it ends." She faltered. For a moment, the woman who had maneuvered through scandal, survived the fury of the public, and emerged wearing a crown was silent. She asked if he planned to go public. He shook his head. "No," he said, "not yet. But I will bring this to the Privy Council if I must." It was a declaration that hit like a thunderclap behind the palace gates. The Privy Council, the ancient advisory body that, though ceremonial in modern times, still held symbolic weight, could trigger scrutiny far beyond media speculation. It would mean official review, consequences, perhaps even abdication of certain roles. According to one source close to the Queen's household, the meeting ended not with resolution, but with rage. Camilla stormed out, slamming the door behind her. For hours, the palace was in a state of near paralysis. Staff whispered. Security repositioned. Senior royals huddled in closed chambers. And Camilla? She was seen only briefly, her eyes red, her hands trembling. But William didn't stop there. What he did next would send shockwaves through the monarchy. If the monarchy was to survive, it had to evolve. And William knew he couldn't do it alone. Behind closed doors, he formed a secret alliance. 4 royals. One mission, to confront the past and protect the future. The confrontation at Windsor had been a turning point, but for William, it was never going to end with a single clash behind palace doors. He had seen too much, uncovered truths that couldn't be ignored, and the time for silent tolerance was over. But power in the monarchy was never wielded alone. It required unity, legitimacy, and strength from within. And so, under the radar and without the knowledge of senior aides, William began assembling what would become the most covert and consequential alliance in modern royal history. They called it Operation Crownfire, a quiet coalition born not of tradition, but necessity. Meeting weekly at Clarence House, away from the public's gaze, the group was hand-picked and unshakable. Princess Anne, the hardened veteran of royal duty, brought fire and discipline. Prince Edward, ever the observer, brought reason and recall. Lady Louise, young but bold, represented the next generation. And Catherine, the silent strategist, was William's anchor, torn but unbreakable. Each meeting began the same way. William placing the classified folder at the center of the table. The weight of the contents shifted the air, again and again. The goal wasn't revenge, it was restoration. The monarchy, if it was to maintain any sense of moral authority, could not carry forward without acknowledging the rot that had crept in through carefully concealed betrayal. At the first meeting, Anne reportedly slammed her hand down and declared, "We looked the other way. No more." Her voice carried the guilt of decades. Edward, though hesitant at first, was quick to follow when presented with Philip's notes. He had respected his father's judgment. To learn that it had been ignored enraged him. Louise, the youngest of them all, surprised everyone. Her voice, soft but cutting, asked the one question that none of the older royals dared to speak aloud. What if the people already suspect the truth? She wasn't interested in silence. She was interested in change. But it was Catherine who quietly held the balance. Her role wasn't loud, but it was essential. She was not just William's wife, she was the future queen consort, expected to stand beside him when all of this would one day come to light. And yet, she had ties of her own relationships carefully cultivated within the royal fold, including with Camilla. The files had shaken her. But she did not waver. Her strength came not from outrage, but from clarity. The monarchy, she told William one night, would not fall because of Camilla's past. Together, this inner circle began mapping out the steps that would follow. Not press releases or staged reconciliations, but a measured, deliberate strategy that might one day remove Camilla from the line of public authority altogether. Still, their alliance was a powder keg of secrets and convictions, and secrets, no matter how carefully kept, always have a way of leaking. Camilla, sensing the tides shifting, wasn't waiting quietly in the wings. She had her own arsenal, one built on image, press loyalty, and public fatigue with royal drama. And in her most desperate hour, she reached for the one weapon that had always saved her before: the media. But just as they began to unite, Camilla made her boldest move, yet turning the press against William in a desperate gambit. Just when William thought the storm was contained, it broke open on front pages across the globe. A letter, allegedly from Philip, was leaked, and it painted a very different picture, one that could dismantle William's crusade before it even began. The headline screamed across every major paper in the United Kingdom: Prince Philip's final words. Camilla was the strength behind the crown. The letter appeared authentic, styled in Philip's distinctive tone, sharp, brief, authoritative. It spoke glowingly of Camilla, praising her resilience, loyalty, and role in stabilizing Charles after Diana's death. But for those who had read the real documents, especially William and his inner circle, it was immediately obvious this was a fabrication, a forged letter, designed not just to shield Camilla, but to undo everything William had uncovered. The timing was surgical. It dropped the day after whispers began emerging that Camilla's role was being reassessed behind palace doors. Suddenly, the public was thrown into confusion. Supporters of Camilla took to social media in outrage, declaring vindication. Those who had begun questioning her integrity were now accused of disrespecting the dead. Inside the palace, chaos simmered behind a forced smile. William's team scrambled to assess the origin of the leak, while Clarence House issued no official statement. The silence wasn't surrender, it was calculation. Privately, William hired an independent cyber forensics firm, known for its work in political intelligence. What they uncovered stunned even the most cynical among them. The metadata from the digital scan of the letter traced back to a device last connected to a freelance PR agent with long documented ties to Camilla's press liaison. The letter had been cobbled together from fragments of real notes by Philip, stitched together with subtle changes, then polished to appear legitimate. A weapon of disinformation, released at the exact moment Camilla needed it most. As the news cycle spun into a frenzy, palace sources reported growing tension between staffers aligned with William and those loyal to Camilla. The trust within royal corridors began to erode, each camp watching the other with suspicion. Catherine reportedly warned William, "This isn't just defense, it's retaliation." But Camilla didn't just rely on one forged document. According to insiders, her team began purging internal messages, redirecting archives, and scrubbing any trace of private correspondences that might contradict the narrative. The operation was quiet, but calculated, an attempt to erase the trail before it could lead back to her. Yet in doing so, they only confirmed what William already suspected: this wasn't desperation. This was strategy. Still, the leak had its intended effect. Public opinion fractured. Editorials debated whether William was blinded by grief, by revenge, or by some misunderstood sense of duty. Analysts called it a royal civil war wrapped in a shroud of secrecy. But William didn't flinch. He didn't offer a press conference or fire back in the media. He simply went quiet, and that silence was more terrifying than fury. Because behind it, something was building. He wasn't backing down. He was preparing. But the truth had already taken root, and William was preparing for the final blow that would reshape the monarchy forever. The crown had always guarded its secrets with iron fists and velvet gloves. But William, holding the weight of his mother's memory and his grandfather's warning, made a choice. At a surprise royal press conference, he addressed the nation not as a prince, but as the future king. And what he revealed would never be forgotten. The world watched in stunned silence as the press gathered under short notice, summoned by the palace to an event that no one had seen coming. The air was thick with speculation. Rumours had been swirling for weeks, but no one expected what followed. William, standing alone at the podium, looked not like a son, nor even an heir, but like a man who had made peace with battle. He didn't begin with ceremony. He began with truth. "We cannot lead a nation by hiding from its truths," he declared. His voice, calm yet thunderous in its clarity, struck like a bell through centuries of royal silence. The room fell completely still. He spoke not in vague gestures, but with surgical precision. "The files passed down by Prince Philip's aide were real," he confirmed. "Their contents, disturbing, undeniable, and dangerous, had been vetted, verified, and confronted. For the first time in modern monarchy, a royal publicly acknowledged the sins, cover-ups, and manipulations hidden behind polished portraits and golden gates. He announced the launch of a new institution, the Royal Historical Accountability Archive. It would begin with the classified materials left by Philip and expand to include testimonies, letters, and records previously buried by tradition. The archive would not be curated by the palace, but by a panel of independent historians, constitutional scholars, and public representatives. The monarchy, William vowed, would no longer be shielded by silence. Then came the moment that would dominate headlines across the world. Without directly naming her, William confirmed that Queen Camilla would be voluntarily stepping back from numerous public-facing roles due to what he called an internal reassessment of royal representation. The language was diplomatic, but the message was unmistakable. Camilla had been removed, not punished, not humiliated, but extracted from the front lines of royal duty. It was a quiet dethroning. Within hours, palace spokespeople confirmed her retreat from all upcoming engagements. She would no longer attend state visits, no longer stand beside the king at foreign receptions, no longer represent the monarchy in matters of Commonwealth diplomacy. The woman who had once defied public rejection to wear the crown had now vanished from its stage without a word. The media exploded. Reactions poured in across the globe. Some praised William's bravery. Others questioned the fallout. But one truth emerged universally. This was no longer the monarchy of secrets. It was a monarchy at war with its own reflection. And yet, amidst the shock and scrutiny, something else began to shift. Prince Philip's name, once shadowed by the weight of old-fashioned stoicism, was reframed. He was no longer merely the Queen's consort. He was the protector of the institution. A man who saw the cracks forming and tried, even in his final years, to warn those who would inherit the throne. His legacy, once rigid, now pulsed with foresight and resilience. He had not gone unheard after all. William ended his speech not with a farewell, but a vow. "My children will inherit a crown that faces its shadows, not buries them," he said, his voice catching for only a second. In that moment, he became more than a royal. He became a reformer, a son, and a future king, shaped not by privilege, but by pain. The monarchy had always survived change, but this time, change came from within. As the palace lights dimmed and the cameras clicked off, one truth remained. The past never truly dies. It waits, hidden, until the right hands dare to open it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.